Elaine, I'm excited to hear about where you came from.
Well, I was born in Chicago, lived on the north side, couldn't wait to go to school, anything to get out of the house. um, I used to, I really, now that I think of it, it was quite a long distance that I walked to school and then at lunchtime I walked home for lunch and then walked back to school. But that was how it was. And when I was in 7th grade, we moved to Winnetka. I was not happy with that. I didn't want to leave my friends. I didn't want to leave the school. My mother said that she was doing this because the school was so good. But my mother was doing it because my mother wanted to live in the suburbs. And that's where we ended up. So I lived there until I went to college. And then I came back. I did not live at home. I got an apartment immediately and took a job at CBS. Well, at WGN. My first job was WGN. And then they moved the studio to the west side of Chicago, and I wanted to be on the Miracle Mile. And so I went to CBS, and I was there when Cronkite was there. His career was just starting. Murrow was still part of CBS at the time. But we thought Murrow was God. And now what's happening, and currently with Leslie Stahl, in the comments that she made about what's going on, apparently Sherry Redstone, she ripped her a new one, which she deserved. Everybody's thinking like, that's the way it used to be. That you didn't let, the company didn't run anything. The other thing was Paley, who owned CBS, didn't allow advertising in news. So news could do what they wanted. Now, as soon as he died, it went the other way. They added advertising, and then it became corporate. I don't watch the news anymore. I haven't, since the day after the election, I have not watched anything that has to do with the news.
So,
I turned it off. I don't even get local news on my television anymore. I didn't. Somebody texted me, as you know, about somebody getting shot or something. I said, not till now, not till you told me. I just didn't know anything. I don't know anything, and I love it that way. My stress level has gone down. I'm not taking blood pressure medicine anymore. It's wonderful.
yeah, so let's talk about
My family.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for my father, I would not have survived. My mother was a bitch. My brother was an asshole and abusive and tried to fuck me.
Your brother?
Yeah. When I was 8 and he was 16. And I used to get in bed with him. What did I know? I was 8 years old. And I wanted him to love me, which he did not. He only, whatever he could get from me, using me, that's what he did. And he tried to get me to touch him, and I knew it was something I wanted to do, and I started getting louder and louder. And since my parents' room was down the hall, he stopped. But I never forgot that. When I brought it up to him years later, after analysis, after he had gone through analysis, not analysis, he didn't go through analysis, but after he had seen a shrink, he denied the whole thing, which abusers do. So, but my mother, we just never connected. I wasn't what she wanted. Somehow I was not the daughter she wanted. If you asked her what she wanted, she couldn't have told you what she wanted, but it wasn't me. And I was so much like my father that years later after analysis, I said, I'm so much like Dad. Why don't we get along? She said, because getting along with your father is one thing. Having a daughter like that is something else. I wasn't the daughter that she wanted. My mother used to practice smiling in a mirror. She was just weird as far as I was concerned.
Was she like a Stepford wife?
Not really. Everybody in the family, the outside of my close family, everybody really, they adored her. Aunt Mary was an Aunt Mary. They didn't live with her, and if I said anything to them, they came after me. Like, how can you say that about her? Well, I lived with her. So, but she had some close friends that I became close to, and they became my mother figures. it just was hard growing up there. I couldn't wait to get out. I remember my mother saying to me, where did we go wrong? I mean, who says that to their kid? My mother did, so.
So what did you study in college?
I studied journalism and psychology. I had a minor in psychology. After analysis, I was going to go back and get my master's in psychology and maybe, practice as a shrink. But I knew I wasn't that healthy. I think you have to be really, really together to do that, and I wasn't that together. So I was just very lucky. I got a really good. A really good analyst. When I was in Chicago. I went back when my mother. I went back from L.A. when my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and I had a nervous breakdown. And I knew it was a nervous breakdown because I was reading a book that somebody famous had written about how he had a nervous breakdown, and all he did was eat certain foods, and he never took baths, and and I went, that's me. My father wrote me a letter saying, no one will ever love you as much as your parents, and that was the last straw. I was going to kill myself. If that was the best I could do, I was getting out. And I called my dad and I said, I'd like to see the shrink that you knew. He had treated my brother. He'd met my parents, and the day that I walked in his office, he said, I thought you might show up one day. And we bonded immediately. And I got to the next step where I was no longer in crisis, but I didn't want it to happen again. And so he said, you have to go through analysis. Either you can stay in Chicago and go through analysis with me because he was an analyst, or you can go back to LA. And I said, I'm going back to LA. I cannot live in the same city as my parents. And so I went back to LA. And he had no one to refer me to. He just looked up the names in a book and went by reputation. And he sent me to one doctor. His name was Grochin. He had treated a lot of people. He actually treated some people I knew. And he said, I don't do very well with Jews. So I called my shrink in Chicago and I said, what do I do now? And he said, take the next name. So the next name was the shrink that had treated Marilyn Monroe. And he was wonderful. He took one look at me and he opened his arms. And he said, look, I can't treat you, but I can be here till you find somebody. And by then I had collected a few more names, and one of the names was Neil Peterson, and that was my analyst, and he was amazing. He knew better than to, get me in bed and try to get me to touch him, but he did it.
And your mom didn't?
I never told him. I didn't know what exactly it was at 8, but I know I didn't like it. And I was very verbal about that, and he let me alone.
Is he still alive?
No. And I told this thing.
Who did you lose first, your mom or your dad?
My mom. She died of breast cancer, which had, metastasized to her bones. And she died in agony. And she wanted to give me the pills. And she had pills sitting on there, and nobody would give her the pills. She never asked me. I would have given her the pills. I wouldn't see anybody in that kind of agony. So we weren't close. If you're not close, you can't confide, and not in the last minute even.
Did you feel a loss when she left the planet?
No. More like relief. I felt badly for my dad, though, because he adored her. She could do absolutely no wrong. He saw the way she treated both my brother and me, but he never spoke up and he never contradicted her. Not before my brother and me, ever. I never saw them ever have an argument, ever, which is not normal. Families argue and then they repair it. I never saw that. I never saw that between them. I had a cousin who told me, your mother almost left your father. And I went, what? Apparently, at one point, my mother was thinking of leaving my father and took me to Starved Rock, Illinois for a weekend. My mother never took me anywhere. Didn't want to be alone with me. I think she was trying to figure out if she could stand me living with me, because that's what would have happened. And we lasted one day and turned around and came back. And she didn't leave my father. So I guess I kept the marriage together.
What did they do professionally?
My mother was a housekeeper who had a lot of help. She never really did anything. Occasionally she cooked, but that was about it. And my father was a lawyer. He was an attorney for Checker Motors, which was my uncle. Checker Motors was my uncle in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And he owned the taxi cab companies too, in Chicago and New York, and I think in Minneapolis. There was one other place. But my father was the attorney for Checker, and he was my mother's brother. They came here from Russia, and they, out of 8 children, 2 became multimillionaires. So they were really driven in a lot of different ways. They were not happy people. This was not a happy group. My dad's family, only my dad and a brother and sister and his father came over when they came, and I think they were better equipped. They were better equipped to deal with the life that they came to. My mother's family was a disaster.
So you're
I'm first generation.
What do you think about our current?
Oh, I think it's a disgrace. I just think the whole thing is, it's hard for me to understand how he could have gotten so many people to believe the bullshit. Because it's bullshit. It's clearly bullshit. I remember when I lived in New York, he was, trying to get his name out there a lot. He would pretend to be his own publicist and call columnists and say that he represented, Donald Trump. And everybody knew that he was doing that. And they all thought he was a joke. And this is the man that evolved into being a president. The reason he is the way he is was he had good advice from Joseph McCarthy's lawyer. I don't remember his name, but he was a terrible man. And he said, if you say a lie often enough, people will believe it. Just keep saying it over and over again, and sooner or later they'll believe it. Which is bullshit right there. I don't think it's. I remember reading Mary McCarthy, who's a writer, said about Lillian Hellman, because they did not like each other. Every word out of her mouth is a lie, including and the. And that is how I always think of Trump. Every word out of his mouth is a lie. You just can't believe anything he says. I don't think he even knows half the time how many lies he's told, if he's ever told the truth. If we can survive the next year and a half and get to the midterms, we have a chance of, at least holding things at a certain level. But I don't see anything on the horizon that looks like a president to me, on either side. They're all angry, mean people that don't inspire. Leadership has to be an inspiration, and I don't see inspiration in any of it.
When you first graduated, you got a job right away at CBS.
Yeah, well, at WGN. Pierre Andre was on the radio at the time. And I just saw a movie where they were talking about Pierre Andre. Apparently he was pretty well known. And I was dating his son, David, who also worked there. But as soon as the station, that was like 6 months in, the station moved to the west side of Chicago. They were in the Tribune Tower on Michigan Avenue when I was there. But it was not hard to get a job. There were so many jobs available. Because you're a secretary. That's how you start out in those days. You start out as a secretary. That's what I did. But I wasn't really. I started out in the marketing department of CBS, and I count on my fingers. So I was not good with adding machines. I was not good with any of that stuff. But I started writing copy, and they let me do that. So I was writing presentations. When I left Chicago, I started working for a PR firm. We handled mostly comics. We handled a lot of the big comics at the time. One of the partners was starting the Whiskey A Go-Go. He and somebody from Chicago who was a police sergeant who, was he a trip? Elmer Valentine. He talked about how he used to pick up the bag for the syndicate every Friday. He would collect the bag. The bag was the illegal money that the cops took from everybody. And he would bring it and lay it on the sergeant's desk and say, "Here's the bag for this week." And the sergeant would say, "Is it good, clean gambling money? There's no drugs, no alcohol?" And Elmer would say, "Yes, Sergeant." And he'd say, "Well, did you take your cut, Elmer?" And Elmer would say, "Yes, I took my cut." He said, "See you next week, Elmer." And out of that money came the Whiskey A Go-Go. They were a bunch of weird guys. And the guy that I worked with left the firm and took me with him. And I learned to do PR. And that's primarily how I ended up, with musicians. I don't remember how I got to Ray Charles, though. That was one of those accidental things where I ended up working for Ray Charles. Ray Charles was scary. I was afraid of him. A lot of women were attracted to him. I was not one of those women. But then he wasn't attracted to me, because in the movie they show that thing where he used to touch women's wrists to figure out if he liked them or not. And he did that to me. But apparently I was not his type, because he never came on to me, which was really cool. I worked with Joe Adams, who was his manager. And Joe was a piece of work. But he was in Aries, and we got along really well.
So how long did you work with Ray?
Not long, 6 months. And then I got a better offer from manager at Motown. That's how I ended up working for a lot of the Motown acts. But I did not work for Motown. I never worked for Motown. I never got a paycheck from Motown. He paid me out of pocket, and God knows where he got it. He probably stole it. I began working for Larry Maxwell, who his job was to handle all the difficult artists at Motown. So I don't know if all of them were on the list, but Marvin Gaye, the Four Tops, and Martha were definitely the people that I ended up working with. Her sister was in the group, and another girl, and I don't remember the other girl's name, but she wasn't friendly with Martha. They didn't get along well. So Martha had people that she didn't get along with that worked with her, as well as, having to put up with crap that she had to put up in the clubs. Martha Reeves was playing a club in San Francisco and complaining like crazy, and the club owner was pissed off. So he called Motown and said, "Come on, get her together. Make sure that she does what we're asking her to do." So I ended up going up there with one of their musicians. He wasn't a manager, but he was also a troubleshooter. His name was Harvey Fuqua. He was actually one of the Moonglows, the original Moonglows, and he calmed her down. She was right. She was right about what was going on and how badly she was being treated. I don't know if they stole from everybody, but I know they stole from Marvin. They definitely stole from Marvin. They stole from Clarence Paul, who was a musician and a manager. He managed Stevie Wonder. He brought Stevie Wonder to Motown, and he said he was on a trip once with Stevie, and he came back and there was tax materials that he had to sign. He looked at, people had forged his name on checks so that he had to pay the taxes on money that he allegedly got, but he never got the money. So this was common. The stuff that they did there, it was blatant and common, and the people that wrote the songs didn't get all the publishing money. I mean, it was a terrible place. It was just a terrible place. It's still a terrible place. The only group that did not have to put up with anybody was the Tops, because the Tops, they had their own system, and that's the way they came to Motown. We're going to do it my way, or we're not coming with you, and that's what they got. And so they were a delight. They were just the best. I had so much fun with them. It was more fun than it was work to be with them. And I did a lot of work for them. I got them Four Tops Day in the city of LA. So, among other things. I mean, they just dropped in to do a few shows and they ended up with Four Tops Day. So,
do you listen to music now?
To their music?
Any music? Contemporary music?
Yeah. Not contemporary music. I listen to that. I listen to classical music, jazz, and I listen to What's Going On a lot. I still love that album. The one that Smokey said was the best album ever in the last century. I think he's right. It's still relevant. Every song on there is relevant.